Hello and welcome to For Your Journey. On this month's episode, we're going to be highlighting a term that we find in our third article of faith, and the first three articles of faith, known as the Apostolicum. That's one of the common beliefs of all Christian denominations. You know, they believe different church councils and church fathers came together centuries ago, and that was one of the doctrinal statements that they use in creeds to make a church Christian. That's what they believe, these first kind of three articles of faith. Yeah, and to unify, we want to highlight this word that's specifically in the third article about universal, and dive deeper into that, what universal means in the context of the church.
Well, the Church of Christ is universal, and that's rooted in the universality of God, because God is universal. And the Chief Apostle highlighted that last year in a nice teaching to show us that we must reflect upon this idea that God, our Creator, our Father, has these universal characteristics.
Yeah, we actually wrote an article on this and kind of touched on them in the autumn 2017 Vision newsletter, but just as a refresher and to dive a little bit deeper and have a conversation about them, going into the first one about how God is perfect. Let's explain his
God is perfect, and that's beautiful because on one hand, in his perfection is all of these other attributes too, that he's omnipresent, that he's omnipotent, that he's omniscient, he knows all things. And when we recognize that, or the more we think about that, the more we realize in that sense how distant we are from God, that he is a completely different being than we are. And when we recognize that, then we can grapple with the feeling that I will not understand God all the time. He has his ways are above our ways, like he told the prophet, like the heavens above the earth. So when he does things and he works in certain ways, perhaps we get aggravated and say, gee, the Lord didn't hear me, he didn't listen to me. Why would this terrible thing happen in my life or even in the world today? We got to realize we don't understand all what God is doing because he's perfect, and we are certainly not perfect.
Right. The next aspect of universality, how God is love.
Yes, and that's a beautiful one as well. The Apostle John said that. And for me, it's very strong that he is not simply loving, but he is love. He's the genesis of love. He's the essence of love. And any love that exists in this world has to root back to him. And the beautiful factor about God's love is it's limitless. It's without conditions. He's not. He doesn't stop loving. When you think it would have been so easy as the creator of everything in the beginning when sin came into the Garden of Eden to just push that aside and say, oh, start over again and do it again. But he didn't. He loved man so much so that he even came and incarnated himself to be Jesus Christ, which is another one of his universal elements, that we believe God is Jesus Christ.
Let's talk about that.
Well, okay, the thing is, again, out of his love, he comes now to show us an example of how we should be. Because there's only so much we could learn from him when he is in heaven and we are here on earth. And if he says, be like me, how would we know? But now he comes to earth. He shows us exactly how to live. He lived as a human lived, and he taught the gospel. And so now we can see what are the attributes of those that love Christ, and what does it mean to be a citizen in heaven someday in his kingdom. So he taught us these things. And of course, the most wonderful thing is he bore torture and all kinds of horrible things, and then gave his life as a sacrifice so that the salvation could be opened for us. So all of that was done by God himself as Jesus Christ.
Right. And adding now God the Spirit into that, the next aspect of universality, how God is triune. God the Father, Son, Spirit.
And that's a beautiful thing as well, but it's complicated. It's not easy to understand. There's no example we could say on earth to say, you see, this is like this, and that's how God is. He's completely unique in that sense. It's God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. All are distinct beings, personalities, but all in complete oneness together. And of course, the beauty of understanding that is it's the only way mankind can come into unity. because we are all diverse. And of course, God made us that way. He appreciates the fact that we're all unique personalities and so on. But he wants us to come into the oneness as he is. Yeah. So we have to learn that from the triune God.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like the word Trinity, it doesn't appear in the Bible anywhere, but aspects of, God revealing himself in those ways is, like you had mentioned before about the Great Commission, at the end of Matthew, he's saying, baptize in the name of Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. I think Jesus' baptism was another indication when like God speaks from heaven and the Spirit descends like a dove, like it's kind of a revelation of the three of them together that way.
Even right in the beginning in Genesis, God says, "Let us make man in our own image."
Yeah.
Who's the us?
Yeah.
So
perfect oneness. Yeah. And
it is a thing though that not all Christian churches necessarily believe in. That's a little bit of controversy, but our understanding is God is this triune being.
Okay. And the last aspect of universality, how God is peace.
Yes, God is peace, and by that, our chief apostle sort of explained that when we have a relationship with God, we begin to learn what our purpose was in life and why he made us. That's been the question of all, even philosophers from the early days. Why are we here? What is our purpose? What are we supposed to do? And we begin to understand God has a purpose for each one of us. And naturally, that is intertwined with us living with him for all eternity and being with him in his kingdom. And when one recognizes that, then they have some security in their life and they're peaceful because they're settled. They're not unsettled by, gee, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what my reason is for living. We have a reason for living. Yeah. Jesus Christ loved us. And he caused us to come into this world through our parents, and now he has a purpose for us in this world and also in the future.
And these points about God being perfect, God being love, God being peace, God being triune, God being Jesus Christ, they're universal because they're the common ground that we should be able to talk with.
They're generally accepted by all Christians. Yeah.
And then also introductory kind of maybe points to talk with others that maybe don't believe in God yet, to try to highlight that God is peace and introduce them to his characteristics of love and his perfection, kind of, because those would be universal. Talking points makes it sound too corporate, but they're universal aspects that we want to make known about God.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing because you can make particularly with a Christian, you can make a connection right away when you begin talking about these things, because the other Christian will say, "Yeah, I agree to that completely. What you're saying." Yeah. Because generally, 85% of our faith is common to most Christian churches. Yeah. 15% is somewhat unique, how we see things and our understandings, but 85% is very similar to others. Yeah. It's because it's based on the gospel of Christ. Yeah. And so that's why sometimes we spend a lot of time talking about the 15%, and perhaps we should spend more time talking about the 85%, to show that we are connected and we belong together in the Church of Christ.
Yeah. And those aren't necessarily scientific numbers. There's no equation, but it's just roughly to show that it is a vast majority that is similar. And when we understand and know that vast majority, that also goes to one of our previous episodes about being a credible witness. It helps us be confident when talking about our faith and talking about God and what he's done.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, great. No, thank you for clarifying that. And thank you for joining us on this episode of For Your Journey. If you have any suggested questions or topics for future discussion, you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. And this has been For Your Journey.